I'm not on camera. Anyway, Jane Birkin, good afternoon. We're at Venice 2009 with your film. What is the title in French? Because let's ignore me.
I'm not quite sure.
The Italian title is
It's a very good title in Italian.
Questione di punto di vista.
Yes, it's 31 views of the Pic Saint-Loup. I think it's because there can be many views of the Mount Fuji, and yet you never see the same thing. That's Rivette's idea. That's why it's that title, because I think it was 31 views of the Pic Saint-Loup, and the Pic Saint-Loup, or 38. It's the Pic Saint-Loup is the mountain which we go round in the film, so it never looks quite the same. So I think in Italy they've called it point of view or something like
Questions
that.
of a point of view.
Questions of a point of view, which is perfect.
So what brought you to this film?
It's my third film with Rivette, and when he asked me for the third time, I was extraordinarily happy. It was a year and a half before we actually did the film, so I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know who I was in it, but I no longer cared, because in the other two films I'd got used to the fact that there's no script, no scenario whatsoever, and you find out what's going to happen to your character if you're lucky the night before, if you're unlucky then 10 minutes before you do the scene.
That's putting an enormous trust in the director, isn't it?
Oh yes, but I have immense trust, and the fun with Sergio Castellito was that he'd done another film with Rivette, and so we were as excited as children with another child, which was Rivette at 63 years old, who was making this film. You have to have complete trust and complete happiness of being together. There's no stress whatsoever. It's completely unstressful.
Because one of the other films that you made with Jacques Rivette, of course, is La Belle Noiseuse.
Yes.
Okay. What do you remember about that experience particularly?
I remember that we were all happy. I remember that my mother and father were still alive, that we did it around the Pic Saint-Loup, which is why he wanted to come back for this film, and that I was with Michel Piccoli and all his children and his wife, and that I was Piccoli's wife, and yet I didn't know, as we didn't have a script, of course, I didn't know what was going to happen. Suddenly Rivette said, now you have to leave a week or 10 days. And I saw Emmanuelle Béard turning up, and I thought, what's she doing with my husband, Piccoli, who wasn't my husband, Piccoli? And so when I came back, I thought everyone had changed a tiny bit, and I tried to look behind the paintings, and exactly like the girl I was supposed to be playing. And so, in fact, his way of working works very well. I think that he needs the suspense himself, but also you don't know if you're going to come out of this this sort of semi-paradise of Venice and be run over by a motorboat in 2 seconds. We have absolutely no idea. So it's roughly the same thing. I love once you get used to it and you realize no one's going to be cross if you're going to muck up the words, because everybody knows you've only just received them. As I'm not French, it makes it more complicated for me because it's in French, but then for Sergio it was the same thing. He might speak better French than me, mais bon. But because he was having fun, it meant that I had, it was lovely. It was absolutely lovely. I just realized little by little that I was supposed to be someone in distress, and that he was an angel who was coming to heal other people's wounds, the circus's wounds, as if the world had become a circus, and was even the clowns with the same repertoire that they've always used throughout the ages. That I didn't know, but this thing of the plates is something that clowns do always, apparently. And even that didn't work for them anymore, so it needed an outside eye to come and cure that. And for the person I played, for the guilt she's feeling over the death of somebody who she probably loved in that circus, he just comes to heal. It's
We're sitting here in Venice, Which makes me think of, a film that you made a few years ago was Dirty Nostalgia with Dirk Bogarde. I'm thinking of Venice because he was death in Venice for Visconti.
Of course.
What do you recall about that? Because, I mean, Dirk Bogarde doesn't get talked about very much. He's one of the greatest actors in the history of British film.
I saw it the other day because I went off. I never see my own films or ever look at them ever again. But I was asked back for, I think it was Tavernier's birthday. So I went back to Lyon and they were showing Dirty Nostalgie. And when I saw it, I thought, wow, that was a really good film. What a pity it didn't get shown more in England or more in France. Maybe it came out at a time when people are 40, which I suppose is roughly the age of people that go to see Tavernier's films at that time anyway. Everyone's afraid of the phone call where their father will die or their mother will die. So perhaps as much as we did for the publicity to say, it has nothing to do with that of anyone dying. Of course, this is a film about families. Well, people got the point, however, that my father was going to die. And Dirk Bogarde was extraordinarily generous. I had a scene where I had to cry, and there were cars going past. And as he saw I was someone about to go at any second, he held my hand under the table, and he said, "Not yet," between his teeth like that, when it was a gros plan on me. And then he squeezed my hand when the car had gone by so that they could use the sound. And so he was that generous and that most unsentimental. Wouldn't hear of when my cat was dying in Paris and everything. He said, "Oh, it's just a fucking cat, you know." And then I suddenly realized, yes, he's had to bury his 4 dogs here, even in the place where we were. If he was a bit huffy that day, it was because he'd had to give up his whole home, house, and lose his friend. And then he had an idea, and he said to Tavernier, "I have an idea of a scene that's missing." And he came back, and he did that extraordinary scene that we did in a sort of fake petrol station, where he talks about dying, and where he bursting the pillow, and the pain. And so he gave everything there was to give, and it was his last film. And I was his friend, hopefully. He was my friend anyway, until he died. And he was always happy to see me and Gabrielle because we were young. And so he used to say, "Oh, you naughty girls." He liked to see us turn up. And Charlotte Rampling, he liked to see Charlotte turning up. So he had a wicked sense of humor. When I said that my daughter Charlotte had stuck her lips together with super glue on a postcard, I got one back saying, "How can you tell?" Because Charlotte never used to talk. He used to call her Chiara Marble, like the marble, because she was absolutely unaffected by his great presence and didn't open her lips during the whole time she was with us on the film. But he was a funny man, a love and a great partner, because he talked to me about Tom Courtenay in King and Country, and how Tom was launching into the great scene, which was his procès, it was his trial, and the technicians were standing round the trenches, but there was a lunch break, so all the people with the sound had all gone, and Dirk Bogarde saw Tom start on this speech and then get into it so much because a few technicians thought he was so wonderful that they sort of hung around and stood, and Tom started to cry, and Dirk was trying to stop him. And then there was a lunch break, and then he did it again. But Dirk said that the one time when it was so wonderful was this first time. That's why he didn't want it to happen to me. And he held my hand so that it wouldn't be lost.
I'll make this the last question because I know you have to go to others, but I think the word iconic is misused sometimes. You may not want to hear it. Is anyone saying?
Everyone's always saying everything's iconic.
Well, yes, it is. It's very misused. But either side, whether like it or not, you've had an extraordinary career. You've worked with an extraordinary panorama of actors and directors. And now, in fact, your daughter Charlotte is, well, as far as I can see, continuing the tradition with
Absolutely.
exactly the same. Do you feel you've had a lucky life?
really, given the very small talent that I had, contrary to Charlotte, at 17, just to have some sort of vulnerability that Antonioni was kind enough to have noticed, and therefore I was in Blow Up. But if not, very little to say for myself, really. I could have just been, I kept on thinking, if I'd stayed in London, would I have dared go on the stage? Probably not, because my mother, Judy Campbell, was so well known that I wouldn't have dared. Did I have enough character to have done something on television like Absolutely Fabulous? No, I don't think so. In the theatre, I wouldn't have been strong enough, and in the movies, I don't think there were movies in those days, because there were kitchen sink dramas, but there was Rita Tushingham and a lot of people that really were interesting. So I think my good fortune has been inestimable. I mean, to think that I was in Caetano Velosso's arms 2 days ago, singing in São Paulo, that I've just come back from Canada for another one, that I shall be with Rufus Wainwright in a week, that I've done this film and a comedy film this year. And I'm 63 and I wasn't that great at the beginning. I've met a lot of very, very interesting people, and people have believed in me far more than I ever believed in myself. And they wanted me to be happier. And so, by meeting people going to extraordinary lands, and to realize that you could get into ex-Yugoslavia, that you could get into Bosnia, that over the Mount Igman you could get in, and it mattered to get to places, to hold people's hands, to say, people care about you at home. Hence my struggle for Aung San Suu Kyi, for anything I can do, which was from the end of the death penalty in France. It's meant as much to me as my professional life has been this other life and the children. So to see Charlotte Sutney in Cannes with her award, which was 25 years exactly after her first award in France for Les Frontés, how my mother would have been happy, and how happy am I to see Lou, my daughter Lou, kick off in New York in a Beckett play where they said she was made for the stage. And my daughter Kate, one of the best photographers in France. It's difficult, that's why I keep touching wood, because my good luck was also to be there. There's a lot of luck in just being there at the right time with the right people, but especially at the right time with your own children when they need you. For that too I've been lucky, not just my career.
Jane Birkin, an immense pleasure to talk to you. Immense. Thank you very much indeed.
That was as interesting as hard talk.
Was it? Oh, that's a compliment.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Yes, exactly.